secret nervous system reset to use when your heart doesn't remember how to feel safe. Be careful with this video. Once you see how your hurt loops have been quietly running your life, you won't be able to call it just how I am anymore. Watch it till the end if you're ready for ordinary calm, real connection, and sleep that isn't haunted by the same old thoughts. You know the patterns that have been running. Replaying conversations at 2 in the morning, editing what you said, rehearsing what you should have said, running the same mental footage until you're exhausted but still can't sleep, bracing for loss even on good days, scanning for the problem that will prove happiness isn't safe to hold, over-explaining simple requests because conflict feels too dangerous to risk, numbing out with screens or busyness or anything that keeps you from sitting still with what you're actually feeling. Maybe you're the person who chooses familiar chaos because calm feels foreign and unsettling. You know how to navigate crisis, but peace makes you nervous, so you create problems to solve just to feel like yourself. Or perhaps you agree when you mean no, saying yes to preserve connection, even when it costs you the energy to maintain your own life. You avoid one small truth until it grows into something heavy you carry everywhere. And the weight of not saying it becomes harder than the saying ever would have been. The hurt loops that feel like who you are. These aren't character defects or signs that you're broken beyond repair. They're hurt loops. Patterns so embedded in your nervous system that they feel like permanent features of who you are, instead of learned responses to seasons when these strategies kept you safe. Each day can feel like the same emotional weather with different circumstances. New situations, same internal bracing. Different people, identical walls going up. It's like repainting a room while all the boxes stay stacked exactly where they are. The color looks fresh, but you're still navigating the same cramped emotional space, still bumping into the same obstacles that keep you from moving freely through moments that are actually okay. You might have tried new morning routines, new affirmations, new cities or jobs or relationships, thinking external change would shift internal weather. But somehow you ended up feeling the same way because the underlying system hadn't been rebuilt. The beliefs that activate under stress, the defaults for handling conflict, the environment you live in, the boundaries you do or don't maintain, the people you keep close. None of that changed, so the outcomes stayed familiar. The reason surface swaps don't create lasting healing is that they're not addressing what generates those patterns in the first place. When someone trades one form of emotional avoidance for another, when they replace one numbing strategy with a different way of not feeling, when they swap one defense mechanism for another that looks more acceptable, they've changed the method, but not the system. Your nervous system isn't betraying you when it defaults back to familiar patterns. It's doing what nervous systems do, which is conserve energy and stick to routes that once kept you safe. Every time you respond to emotional pressure in the same way, whether that's ruminating until you're exhausted, shutting down completely, fawning to keep the peace, or fighting to keep control, you're reinforcing pathways that made perfect sense when those responses were genuinely necessary for survival. When stress builds, or even when things get unexpectedly good, your system reaches for the program it knows. The overthinking that masquerades as problem-solving, the emotional shutdown that feels like strength, the people-pleasing that wears the costume of kindness, the perfectionism that disguises itself as excellence. These were protective strategies that helped you survive chapters when surviving was all you could do. The tiny instant that changes everything. But there was a moment when something cracked open. That tiny instant when you caught yourself in the middle of an old pattern, and instead of just flowing through it automatically, you actually noticed it happening. Your finger hovered over the app you always open when feelings start rising, and you saw the avoidance clearly. You heard yourself apologizing for existing and recognized the pattern. Your jaw tightened before reading a harmless text, and you felt the old defense activating when nothing was actually threatening you. That pause isn't trivial. It's the hinge point, the first meaningful fracture in the loop and proof that readiness has arrived. For the first time, you're present enough to notice that this moment is actually okay, and you're the one bracing against it. Here's what's actually shifting. You're starting to see hurt loops as information instead of permanent features of who you are. The old protective identity kept you safe during seasons when safety required those particular defenses. But that identity has become too small for who you're becoming. The loop isn't punishment for past mistakes. It's a message that you've outgrown this way of surviving. And when you look closely, you can see quiet signs that healing has already begun. You laugh at something small, and it surprises you because you haven't felt that lightness in months. You take a breath that actually reaches lower in your body instead of catching in your chest. You choose a short walk over the doom scroll one evening and notice you feel better after. Food starts tasting like something again, instead of just being fuel you consume while distracted. You send one honest message instead of the performance you usually craft. A boundary holds without the catastrophe you predicted. You take a nap without the guilt that usually ruins rest. You wake one morning with a small, unearned calm, and instead of immediately searching for what's wrong, you let it be there for a minute. How small shifts compound into real healing. These shifts don't feel dramatic. There's no sudden enlightenment or personality transplant. Instead, it's like turning down the volume on static you didn't realize had been playing constantly. Your shoulders drop half an inch. The tightness in your jaw loosens. Decisions that used to require endless internal negotiation start feeling simpler. Watch what happens when these small alignments start to compound. You get 10 minutes of morning light and your whole day feels gentler. That gentler energy means the reply you send to someone is kinder than it would have been. The kinder interaction creates an easier afternoon. You place one clean no to protect your evening, and sleep actually restores you. Better sleep means clearer thinking the next morning. Clearer thinking means you keep a small promise to yourself, and keeping promises to yourself rebuilds trust that's been broken. You spend 5 minutes tidying one surface and your mind feels less cluttered. That mental lightness makes it easier to send the message you've been avoiding. Sending it on time means less anxiety tomorrow. You take a 10-minute walk after lunch, and your nervous system settles enough that you don't spiral in the afternoon. Not spiraling means you have energy for a conversation that matters. Each change feels manageable alone, but together they create momentum that carries you into entirely different emotional territory. Good moments stop feeling like setups for disappointment. Ease stops feeling like something you need to earn through suffering. Peace becomes something you can hold without gripping so tight it breaks. This momentum builds because you're finally working with your nervous system instead of against it. You're not constantly managing threat responses that aren't needed anymore. You're not performing okayness for others while collapsing in private. You're creating conditions where steadier moods become more likely without forcing them. The backwards approach. Most people take to healing. This is where most people have been approaching healing backwards. They've been trying to chase breakthrough moments, force feelings, manage every emotional dip, predict and prevent every possible trigger. But steadier well-being is downstream from designed conditions. It's what naturally flows from the inputs you repeat daily. Instead of waiting for life to be perfect before allowing yourself to feel okay, You become someone who creates small conditions where healing can land. Instead of hoping for a magical day that fixes everything, you become someone who tends to the ordinary elements that compound into steadier peace. You allocate attention gently instead of critically. You set simple boundaries instead of complex rules. You practice small moments of savoring instead of rushing past every good thing. Your brain has what neuroscientists call the reticular activating system, an attention filter that decides what information reaches conscious awareness. Think of it like a search function that highlights whatever you've programmed it to notice. When you're thinking about a specific song, you suddenly hear it everywhere. When you focus on threat and disappointment, you find evidence of danger and letdown constantly. But when your priorities begin to shift toward cues of safety, reciprocity, and enoughness, your attention filter shifts with it. You start noticing moments of actual okayness that were invisible when you were scanning only for problems. The person who always braced for abandonment starts recognizing when people actually show up consistently. The chronic ruminator starts noticing when their mind is quiet. The habitual people-pleaser starts feeling the relief of honest no's. What changes when you step into the identity of someone who doesn't force healing but designs conditions where it becomes likely? Someone who doesn't perform recovery but builds days where their nervous system can actually exhale. You stop being someone moods happen to and start being someone who participates in creating emotional conditions. Let good be ordinary. Change the inputs. Let peace stay. When the filter shifts, small lights get brighter. Design a day your heart can breathe in. Gentleness is not weakness, it's traction. How this transformation unfolds in real life. This transformation often looks unremarkable from the outside, but feels profound from within. Someone moves their phone to charge outside the bedroom and starts sleeping through the night. They open the window each morning and let light in, and mornings stop feeling so heavy. They write one honest sentence about how they feel instead of performing positivity for an imaginary audience. They send a clear reply they've been delaying instead of crafting the perfect response. They take a 10-minute walk after lunch even when it feels like there's no time. They say a kind no to a draining plan without elaborate justification, and the world doesn't end. They tidy one counter before bed, so they wake to a space that doesn't immediately overwhelm them. They establish a short evening wind-down ritual that signals it's okay to stop. Within a few weeks, their days feel different in ways they can't quite articulate, but definitely sense. Sleep comes easier and lasts longer. Laughter arrives sooner and doesn't require justification. A friend invites them out, and they say yes without the usual dread. Food tastes better because they're actually tasting it instead of consuming it while scrolling. A small hobby they'd abandoned returns because they have energy that isn't being drained by constant emotional management. From the outside, the shift might look subtle. Someone seems a little lighter, a little less on edge, a little more present in conversations. From the inside, it's the difference between surviving and actually living. It's the natural result of tuned attention and designed inputs, creating space for a nervous system to finally settle. You're not waiting for permission to feel okay. You're not waiting for perfect circumstances before designing one small condition that supports your well-being. You're not waiting until everything is fixed before allowing yourself moments of ease. The healing is happening right now, in the space between recognizing old patterns and choosing something different. Every time you take the walk instead of the scroll, every time you keep one boundary that protects your energy, Every time you let a good moment be enough without immediately searching for the flaw, you're building the system that makes steadier healing more likely. Every time you choose one small input that supports your nervous system, morning light, honest communication, gentle movement, actual rest, you're proving to yourself that your heart actually can hold good things. If you made it this far, your heart is already healing. The fact that these words resonate means your attention filter is already changing. Being ready to heal isn't some distant milestone waiting for perfect conditions. It's the natural expression of a system that's been quietly reorganizing around the possibility that you deserve to feel okay without earning it through suffering. It shows up as unrushed mornings, messages answered with care instead of anxiety, a counter that stays clear, a short walk that becomes routine, one boundary kept without guilt, and moments actually savored instead of immediately analyzed for what could go wrong. Keep tuning your attention. Keep repeating small inputs that support your well-being. Keep allowing good moments to be ordinary instead of rare miracles requiring protection. The system is already working with you. You just needed to remember that your heart was always capable of holding this. Some seasons are heavy, and sometimes professional support makes the path clearer. But right now, in this moment, you have more capacity than you've been giving yourself credit for. And that capacity is growing with each small choice toward gentleness instead of force, toward presence instead of performance, toward truth instead of protection that no longer serves. The healing isn't coming. It's already here.